everyone. This is Nitha Ramachandra from the NR Hour Sports Show. This is episode 830. I'm joined by a really special guest. His name is Brad Hopkins. He's a former NFL offensive tackle. He played for the Tennessee Titans, Houston Oilers. He went to college at Illinois, and I'm really looking forward to this interview. But now you can find him on Sirius XM NFL Radio. He does a great job covering the game now, and it's truly an honor to have him on the show. Thank you, Brad, for coming on. How are you and your family doing today?
Listen, we're blessed. Appreciate you having me on today. Every day on this side of the grass is a good day, brother.
Yeah. So I want to start off with your childhood growing up, and for you, when did you get interested in playing sports? And before choosing football, did you get to play any other sports growing up? And who did you have as a role model that you looked up to in the NFL?
Well, the role model, first off, didn't play sports. My role model was my father. My dad was very interactive. I had two working parents. My mother worked second shift, so it left a lot of responsibility to my dad to tend to me and my brother. And he was at practices, took us to things that we needed, cooked our meals sometimes if my mom didn't make the meal before she left for work. So my dad being very interactive and a huge part of my life, he's always been someone I looked up to. As a matter of fact, I didn't even think about athletics as a career. My dad was the quality control director for John Deere Harvester, where I grew up. So he's a plant guy. Walked around with a shirt and tie and make sure that everything was up and up, That's the kind of role model that I had when I grew up. And I didn't like football when I was younger. Nathan, to be honest, basketball was something that I was extremely passionate about. I found out that whenever I had a free moment, that's where I wanted to be. It was on the basketball court. Football at an early age, it's hard for you to have pickup football games other than just, kill the man with the football, that kind of stuff. But organized football, it just really wasn't for me. So I really didn't pour myself into it until later in high school, actually. So basketball is what I thought I was going to end up being. But, 6'4.5", 270. There aren't many guards. I'm not Zion Williamson by any stretch. So it obviously wasn't going to happen.
You could have been a power forward center, man.
So Baby Barkley is what they used to call him back in the day. Barkley was when he was the man. He wasn't the ground mound or rebound. Maybe he was. Yeah, he was the ground mound rebound, if I remember correctly. And that's the way I kind of fashioned my game. I had handles. I can go coast to coast. Yeah, my outside perimeter shooting was a little questionable, but I could definitely bang you in the paint, bro. My footwork was impeccable. I really love the sport of basketball.
Maybe you can play for the Brooklyn Nets this year. That's what they need for the Nets.
Yeah. This was when I had cartilage in my right knee. So those days are gone now, brother.
Yeah. So for you, obviously, when you were transitioning into football, take me back to your process back in the day, and did you get to play any other positions other than before settling on offensive tackle? And what were the main things that you learned from your coaching staff? So
check this story out. My dad used to make me go out for football because he felt idle hands were for the devil. I grew up in a bad area, and those kids that didn't have anything to do that weren't, occupying their free time, right, things can happen. Mm-hmm. So to go out for, I went out for baseball, never really liked it. Went out for football, never really liked it. Was always waiting for basketball season to come around. So my sophomore year in high school, Nathan, I said, you know what? My dad is not going to make me go out for football. I'm going to do it myself. So I went out, ended up playing. I never really played up until that point. I was always on the bench or just somebody that was just like one of the guys standing on the sidelines because I really wasn't that committed to it. But I ended up starting at guard, as a matter of fact. The spring between my sophomore year and my junior year, the coaches came up to me and said, we're going to try a play for you and see what happens. What you're going to do is you're going to get at the end of the line of scrimmage. You're going to act like you're blocking. And then what you're going to do is you're going to feint all the way across the middle of the line of scrimmage, and we're going to throw you the ball and see what happens. Well, 70 yards later, when I was standing in the end zone, I then transitioned to tackle, or to tight end, rather. So my junior and senior year, Nathan and I was a tight end. Got a scholarship to Illinois as a tight end. And it was the summer before I was to show up for my freshman year at Illinois that I gained 40 pounds. Very disciplined, wasn't really thinking about, sports in itself being a career move for me. It was a way to get an education. And so I basically ate my way to tackle. I kind of liked it, First off, it gave me more of a role on the team. I ended up being a backup as a true freshman. And I didn't even redshirt my freshman year. As a matter of fact, I was backing up an All-American, as a matter of fact, at left tackle. But I got to travel. You know, I got to go on all the games. So while the other freshmen that were redshirting didn't get to travel and things like that, I did. And my roommate did, as a matter of fact. His name was Mark Qualls. He was a running back at the time. Same situation. They wanted him as a backup, and he was a true freshman. And then my sophomore year, I actually got a stress fracture in my foot. And it put me out for a while. But when I came back my junior year, and I started. Then I had my redshirt junior year, and I started again. And, of course, I started my senior year. So it was within those 3 years that I ultimately ended up making a name for myself, for scouts were starting to notice me. And I got an invite to the Combine, got an invite to the Senior Bowl, did well in those 2 instances. Next thing you know, their teams, the draft prognosticators were talking about me being a pick in a draft. As a matter of fact, I was supposed to be a Cleveland Brown when Bill Belichick was coaching the team there. Matter of fact, Nick Saban was our defensive coordinator.
Oh, wow.
Bill Belichick and I had many conversations in Champaign, came and watched film with me, worked me out, and we all knew that I was going to the Cleveland Browns at 14. Well, the Houston Oilers at the time had a left tackle vacancy. Don Maggs, who was their normal starter, took free agency money to Denver, and he left. And so they were scrambling, and they needed to pick up a tackle to play left tackle, and they actually traded with the Philadelphia Eagles at 13 to pick me before the Browns could get me at 14. Wow. That was a part of the Herschel Walker situation. There was some trickle down effect where they ended up having an extra pick or something, and then they ended up trading it with the Eagles, and the Eagles ended up picking at 18, giving the Oilers the 13th pick. They picked me, and everything is everything. I started as a rookie, played 13 years, moved from Houston to Nashville, had my sons in Houston, had my daughter here in Nashville, looked at the quality of life, where I wanted to settle my bones and start my next career, and Nashville is where I stayed, and that's where I'm at right now.
Wow. Speaking of that Herschel Walker trade, that must have been a massive trade. And speaking of, we had Jimmy Smith on the show too recently, wide receiver.
Yes.
And he was part of that trade too.
Yeah. I remember Jimmy.
Yeah, the pick. Actually, that he was that one of those picks was him actually in that trade.
How about that? 60 inspiration. Really good player. Had a lot of respect for him. Of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars in the division that I played in for all of my career. I remember their first game. Matter of fact, we were the Jacksonville Jaguars' first loss. We were also the Jacksonville Jaguars' first win because they beat us the second time around that season that they started. So got a weird kinship with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
So before we get to your draft experience, I just want to ask you this. I'm just curious. Did you thought that you could have stayed at tight end throughout your career, or?
I wished I would have stayed at tight end. Me being a basketball player, like I just mentioned, there's a lot of athleticism, the ball in your hand, a lot of spotlight, which is kind of what I was used to as a basketball player. And I could do some of those things that I similarly did on the court, on the football field. I just wasn't mentally prepared for what was required of me. You know what I'm saying? I got way out of shape. I really wasn't even strong enough to play tackle. I was thinking of myself more athletically. But if I had managed my weight, if I had then poured myself and been more committed to being a tight end, then that's probably where I would have stayed. And looking back at it, and I'm sure we'll get to this later on in the interview, my son actually is a tight end for the Rams.
Oh, wow.
He's doing the exact same thing that I would have done if I didn't eat my way out of the position. Now, everything's everything. I can't complain about the way things worked out. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I could have played tight end, and in some instances, wished I did.
Yeah, so we'll definitely get to your son later on in the show. And so take me back to your draft experience. Obviously, you got drafted by the Houston Oilers, 1993, round 1, pick 13, obviously. And what was that like, just waiting for your name to be called, and you worked hard for this, and waiting with your family, celebrating with your family. And once your name got called from the Tennessee Titans, a great organization, what was it feeling like?
So
Houston Oilers.
Yeah, the Illinois at the time that I was there, we were fortunate to go to 5 straight bowl games. Jeff George was our quarterback. We had some really, really good players. We had some first-round picks, within the years that I was there. And we saw some guys that thought that they were going to get drafted and didn't get drafted. So the reality had been laid out there in front of me as to what can really happen. You can make it or you might not make it. And being such a minute percentage of people that actually make this a successful career, I was always thinking about the next phase. I really wasn't thinking that football was going to carry me 13 years into my life. Yeah. I had to transition later. I was thinking, I'll do this thing as long as it'll have me. and then I'll just think about getting a regular job, maybe open a business and things of that nature. So when my name, really started getting circulated about being a draft pick, I kind of tried to put it in the back of my mind, put it off to the side. Like, there are a lot of things that can happen, Brad, and this wasn't even something I was fully committed to just 3 years ago.
Right.
So I just kind of was like, if I get drafted, I get drafted. Now, realistically, Nathan, if I didn't get drafted, I probably would have been pissed off. You know what I mean? I was putting it like, if I don't get drafted, it's not going to bother me, So I was actually stayed away from the television. Right. My mom and dad were watching the draft diligently. I had a couple of friends over and some sports writers that followed me through high school. Really wasn't anything extensive, just in case something happened, And I remember standing in the front yard and my dad just yells, "Houston!" from the living room, right? I'm like, let's talk about Houston. What's going on in Houston? I thought I was going to be Cleveland Brown, So they're like, get in here. So sure enough, the Houston Oilers had picked me, and I just sat there. There's a picture that I have of me and a dear friend of mine sitting on my couch, and I have my hands in my head like this. It can kind of be construed as, he was happy that he made it. But I was thinking, in my head, seriously, what in the hell have I got myself into? I mean, I'm the 13th pick of this draft, which means there's some expectation that comes along with that, I really wasn't ready for the pressure that was going to follow me after I got my name called, because they expected me to start. And I was starting in an offense that I'd never even heard of. Right. Never heard of the run and shoot. You know what I'm saying? 4 wides, rolling pocket. Warren Moon, this iconic quarterback, was the guy. Yeah. Mike Munchak were Hall of Famers, part of this line that had been in the league 10, 11 years before I even got drafted. What in the hell have I got myself into? But I settled in. It was hard the first few games, the first few weeks, just trying to adapt and get myself antiquated with the whole NFL process and whatnot. And eventually I just, I found my footing and really started to think about progressing. Really wanted to think about the legacy that I was going to leave. I just want to make this a one-stop shop. Do I really want to make something of this? And I think a couple of years in, I had a reality check and I had a gut check moment. I said, you know what? This is what I am. I'm a football player. So I'm going to make the most of it. I consider myself a basketball player, but you're going to use those skills and make them applicable to what you do on the football field, which is what I did. Yeah. Some dude that was going to grind you into the ground and, beat you up and all that sort of stuff. I was as athletic as those defenders that I was trying to keep out of the pocket. You know what I mean? So that's the way I played the game. More like shadowing you in basketball. The quarterback was the basketball goal. I tried to stay between my man and the basket, right, which was Warren Moon or Steve McNair. Ironically, I'm one of a few linemen that got to block for both Warren Moon and Steve McNair. Yep. So I just used the transition as best I could, and ultimately ended up working out.
I mean, you had a great career, man. You made it to 2 Pro Bowls. That's amazing career right there.
Yeah, lucky. Got lucky.
So I want to ask you though. So now going into training camp with the Houston Oilers and seeing the player, you just mentioned Warren Moon, Steve McNair, and you also played with Eddie George throughout your career too. That's amazing. And what was it like playing with this team and blocking for Warren Moon, a legendary quarterback, and the late Steve McNair?
So I remember Warren yelling at me in the huddle my rookie year about talking in the huddle. You know what I mean? I felt so disrespected, Nathan. I was like, are you kidding me? I'm a grown man. So as I was about to pop back off to him, Mike grabbed my arm, Munchak, and he's like, don't do that. Just, be a professional. Because in one instance, he was right, but he was wrong. And I wasn't the one talking. It was Haywood Jeffries that was talking, and I was just responding to him. But you can't come up with any excuses, so I just sat there with my lip zipped, right? But I say that to say I was the low man on the totem pole, even though I was the first round pick. You know what I'm saying? I'm playing with veterans that had been in the league half as old as I was, basically. And I really tried to find who I was. Buddy Ryan was our defensive coordinator. We all know the history between he and Kevin Gilbride and the offense and defense and how, just that team itself was discombobulated, but yet we won games. My rookie year, we went to the divisional round of the playoffs, lost to the Chiefs when they had Joe Montana, but yet and still, I was a part of a successful team. Then, of course, we traded Warren to Minnesota, and his backup, Cody Carlson, was in. I think knocked out somewhere during the season. Bucky Richardson, an A&M quarterback, stepped in. We had an 8-8 season. Then at that time, no, actually, this next year was 2-14. My second year, we were 2-14. And the city of Houston, Lovely Blue fan base had been used to 7 straight years of playoffs. They weren't used to like having a completely dysfunctional season, which is what we had. And then they started making some changes. Obviously, Kevin was no longer our offensive coordinator. They brought in a guy that brought in more of a traditional pro-style offense, tight ends, fullbacks, things of that nature. And we started really making a transition. But it was also then that Bud Adams wanted some more renovations done to the Astrodome. And at that point, the city of Houston was like, "Nah, we've given you way too much." You know, and at the back, I think it was a matter of fact, the history goes back to him firing Bum Phillips that really set the fan base in a mood about who he was. They weren't willing to give him the accommodations that he felt he needed to keep the Astrodome a competitive venue, comparatively speaking, to the other teams in the league. So they pushed back, but pushed back even harder and moved the team to Tennessee. So it was then that we drafted Steve McNair maybe a year or two before, and Eddie George a year before that.
Yeah.
And we were a vagabond group of athletes heading to Nashville, playing our first season in Memphis, playing our second season in Vanderbilt Stadium, before we ultimately played in then Adelphia Coliseum, right on the Cumberland River, which is our digs, and then we ended up going to the Super Bowl. So early on, it was kind of crazy, kind of hectic. You just had to find your way. But throughout that whole process, I think that we kept the nucleus together and we had more of a family feel to where we were able to play competitively while we were in transition and ultimately ended up playing to the point where we were one of the better teams in the division once we found our home. So it was a crazy career, Spent 5 years in Houston, loved it, loved the fan base, spent the next 8 in Nashville. I obviously love Nashville. I wouldn't still be here, So it was a crazy transition to say the least, but one that I look back and thankful that I was a part of.
Yeah. So this is a 2-part question, and obviously, what was you guys' thoughts as a team with the name changes and with the Houston Oilers, and now you guys were the Tennessee Oilers too, and then now Tennessee Titans. But what do you guys think of the name change, and also what was it like spending your career with one team? Because it's a rarity now that players get to spend with one team, and it's a business. So for you, take me back to that experience with the name change and playing with one team.
That's a good question. First off, Tennessee needed its own identity. There wasn't pro sports in the state of Tennessee before we got here. Ironically, we got here, I think, the same year that the Predators did. Mm-hmm. Hoover then traded the Grizzlies to Memphis. Right. So now we've got, basketball, hockey, and football in the state of Tennessee. But before that, this was more of an SEC state. You know what I'm saying? Volunteers, Alabama, stuff like that. Ole Miss, and that was reflective of us even going to Memphis and really not having a good following. People went to watch us play in Memphis to watch the teams that they grew up watching once they found out they were going to be close to where they lived. So they weren't there to support us, the Tennessee Oilers. They were there to support the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Washington football team, who weren't called the football team back then, and things like that. So it was kind of an eye-opener. But it was the winning, I think, Nathan, that really got the state to responding to who we were. Do you remember the movie?
Remember the Titans?
No, it was the one with Tom Hanks where he was on an island.
Oh, yeah, I know you were talking about. I forgot the name too.
Yeah, your listeners they'll remember. Yeah. But do you remember when Tom Hanks got back to the United States and his fiance at the time told him, "Oh, there's been a lot that's happened. Nashville got a team. They're called the Tennessee Titans. They went to the Super Bowl. I mean, just the excitement of it all. You can see it in this movie. It was portrayed, right? Well, that's kind of what it was in the state here. Like, people were like, "Oh my God, we got a football team and they went to the Super Bowl." But yet and still, they were a part of that. And we also had competitive teams after that. I think I went to like 3 AFC championship games. We were in the playoffs consistently. And it's been a hard fight to at least give this team sort of that identity that it had in the late 90s, early 2000s. But they've been fighting to get back to that, But they needed their own identity. So them changing the name. And I still have some camp gear that Tennessee Oilers on it. With the Oil Derrick of the Tennessee on it. Probably worth some money now. I want to check that out on eBay or something. Yeah. But it was different. So then when it came up the name Titans, now Nashville's got its own identity. But I will say, even though there are pro sports in the states, I say state because Memphis has its own team too, there's a divide. You don't really see that much Tennessee Titans paraphernalia in the Shelby County, Memphis area. Right. And you see a lot of Memphis Grizzlies stuff in the Davidson, Williamson County area in Nashville. You know, I wish they were more conjoined, you know, because them being our in-state basketball team, I got a honk for John Morant.
Right.
And the Grizzlies, man, that boy is bad, you know. So I'm sure he probably roots for Derrick Henry, you know. So it helps, but it was a crazy situation. And what was the second part to that question you asked?
Yeah, so for you, what was it like spending your career with one team? Because it's a rarity now.
Yeah, it didn't go anywhere else. Didn't think about going anywhere else. Never saw free agency in my entire career. They always redid my deals the year before I was set to become a free agent. And I wasn't one of those guys that needed to make what everybody else was making. You know, as a matter of fact, I was the highest paid offensive lineman in NFL history during one of those contracts. So the franchise took care of me. And to show that loyalty that I had to the franchise, I never even considered going to the same place. For one, the reality is there's no guarantee you're going to have the success leaving one organization going to another. You know, there's going to be a different way of doing things, different philosophies, you know, different cohesion, everything. And I just really wasn't one. I'm a creature of habit. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want my structure impeded. I didn't want what I had gained and what I'd accomplished and how I made myself to be disrupted by going someplace else and trying to start all over. And then ultimately, when I was released after my 13th year, I really wasn't even considering going anywhere else. But for a second, I said, you know what? I can go to Atlanta because Atlanta was only 3 hours from where I had just built a house here in Nashville.
Right.
My kids were, you know, really young at the time, and that was my focus, especially when you start to come to the later years of your career. I didn't want to miss out on them growing up because I was chasing the buck, you know, a few more years, you know, playing in some other city I'd never even played in before. So ultimately, I made the decision to retire so that way I could be the dad that I needed to be to my kids, and I don't have any regrets about that.
Interesting. So I wanted to take me back to the Super Bowl experience. Obviously, the result didn't pan out, but what was it like just playing in the Super Bowl, getting that experience? Obviously, you guys had a lot of winning seasons and a great roster, and just explain the Super Bowl experience with you guys.
Well, for us, we were the underdogs.
Yeah,
playing against the greatest show on turf, you know, Kurt Warner and the likes, and we didn't have near as much pressure as they did. Crazy thing was Atlanta was experiencing an ice storm that whole week. It was like way below normal temperatures.
Wow.
It wasn't typical of an Atlanta January, basically, even though obviously it was wintertime. Atlanta's not that cold, not as cold as it got.
Right.
So it kind of really hampered a little bit of what we would do normally because a lot of things that go on in the Super Bowl are outside. But just playing in the game itself, the first half was completely different than the second half. I think that we were still a little shell-shocked, the fact that we were on that stage, playing in front of everybody. You know, timing is a little bit off, and that the pregame is a little longer, halftime's a little longer. There are things that are just different about that game. Even though you try and compartmentalize it and make it like every other game, it's really not. But it was the second half, Nathan, that we really started to understand just how close we were to winning this thing. And as we started to gain momentum, we took it right down to the wire. And of course, Super Bowl 34 goes down in the lore of Super Bowl history, Super Bowl stories as, you know, one of the more entertaining games because we could have tied it up and then maybe even taken it into overtime. Who knows? Derrick would have won. But it was crazy. I still remember the confetti falling from the ceilings of the dome, the Georgia Dome at the time. But it wasn't for us, you know. But I think that we felt collectively good at the performance that we put on, even though we didn't we didn't win the game. But everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to be labeled a Super Bowl champion. It's one thing that when you look up my wiki and says that I played in Super Bowl 34, it'd be different to say I won Super Bowl 34. You know what I mean? But we tried our best to get back there. We're a few games short on a lot of instances. So looking back at it, it was a great run. And it all was sparked basically because of that magical year in 1999 when we first rolled out Adelphia Coliseum and played against the Bengals week 1 to start the season. We barely won that game.
Man, so looking back at your career, how grateful are you that you got to play the game of football? And obviously you play basketball too. And how grateful are you to be in this position as a former NFL player? And you started at most of your games. And just to be a 2-time Pro Bowl, play with a great organization play with great teammates, great coaches, and now covering the game as an analyst. How grateful are you to be in this position?
Sure, the experience allows me to articulate the game a little differently than some that haven't. But that's not what I took from football. From football, I took how to work with other people, how to set goals, how to create a process to be successful, discipline. And when you look back at having an NFL career, especially one in the trenches, there aren't many jobs that are going to be harder than that. You know what I mean? So I think that I just took the experience as a growing tool, basically, on how to become a man. And at the age of 22, when I got drafted, 23 years old, when I got drafted, I had to become a man quickly.
Right.
And I was baptized by fire. But, I came out on the other side, I think a better man for it. And it allows me to then focus on the things that I want to accomplish in life and set a plan and a course of action to get it done. I'm not sure that I would have done that as easily had I not had these experiences. Because football, Nathan, is a unique sport. Basketball, you play both ends of the court, your offense and defense. Right. You can't pick one or the other. And there are so many moving parts, there's so many variables that you rely on each other. A quarterback, as big as his arm may be, as accurate a passer as he may be, he ain't tackling nobody.
Right. He's
not blocking anybody. Those guys that, they're great cover guys in the back end, they're not scoring touchdowns unless they get a pick. You know what I'm saying? They're not kicking field goals. So you're reliant interdependently on the other people, on the guy to your left and the guy to your right. You know what I'm saying? I said, I went like this, your left and your right. Either way, you see what I'm saying? I had to rely on other people. They had to rely on me. So with that kind of accountability, it creates a structure in your life. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I used to become, a financial representative. That's what I use to sell cars. That's what I use to try and be an entrepreneur. That's what I use even on my daily trek to become the best broadcaster that I can be.
Right.
And also working in private equity, it allows me to get in front of my clients and share my experience and try and map out a course that makes sense to them so that way they can transition from pro sports to real life without that much of a hiccup. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, my job is the player development director. And what that means is I have close relation with a lot of guys that are doing what I did. And I use the 13 years that I played, my successes, my failures, to kind of help put them on a track to really see this whole thing in totality and make the best of it.
Yeah, well, actually, speaking of your defense, we also had Kevin Carter on the show.
That's my guy, man.
Yeah. We also had,
I got a picture of him somewhere around here. Yeah. No, seriously. Like, crazy thing is, Kevin and I played against each other in the Super Bowl. He was more going against John Runyon, former, Oiler, Titan, Philadelphia Eagle tackle, and state representative, if I remember correctly. He went against him more often than not. But then when Kevin came to us as a free agent, I think a couple years later, remember, Kevin was Defensive Player of the Year, so we had a lot of respect for KC.
Right.
And he was a man among men. But we developed a really, really, really close relationship. I love him like a brother. And I'm a better person having had met him. So it's great that you had Kevin on. I'm sure that he was thoroughly entertaining.
Yeah, it was awesome. He was
a
great guy. It was awesome to talk to, and what a great career he had as a defensive player.
Absolutely. And super cerebral too.
Yeah.
He's super smart. You know what I mean? He's one of those guys that whatever he puts his mind to, he's going to accomplish it, So I've always had a lot of respect for Kevin and his family. Zion, Shima. Family. Yeah, man. Zion's taller than him. Yeah, man. So we talk about our kids that are playing.
Yeah.
I never thought that Zion would end up playing football. I thought for sure he had basketball height that this guy was going to be a hooper. You know what I mean? But you never know.
Yeah. So before we get to your broadcasting career in Sirius XM NFL, I want to get to your son. What's the scouting report on your son, and how excited is he now to play with Matthew Stafford, Deshaun Jackson? Yeah. How excited is he?
So he just got back to Nashville from the mini camps that they had in LA. Okay. During that experience, this was the first time they had fans in SoFi Stadium. I think he said 25,000 were there. So, maybe a quarter of the people that will be there on a regular basis, they got to experience, because last year, no one got to see them play in the stadium. And he was explaining how surreal that was. But what he also didn't have in his rookie year, Nathan, was those mini camps.
Right.
literally after was drafted, showed up to training camp in July, and boom, here was the season.
Yeah.
Had that time to get himself acclimated, running through a couple of months of drills with your fellow rookies before you're thrown into the fray with the veterans. He didn't have that option. So this was the first year that he had to really get the full experience of being an NFL football player. Now, there have been some changes, especially at his position, where some guys have gone on to other teams, which have opened up the door for opportunity, but he knows he has to take advantage of that. Right. So there will be more opportunity for him to get on the field, I think, this year, but he has to make good on those opportunities, So the hope is that he's ready when his name's called. He gets the call into the game, and Matthew Stafford throws in that slant, that skinny post route over the middle, and shakes down the safety. It's for a touchdown. That's what they're waiting for, man. So we're excited about his career, but he's also appreciative of where he's at. It's a 4th round pick. Wow. We can only cross our fingers and hope that that he does well for himself and is happy with where he's at. So we'll see. We're excited about it.
And he has a great coach in Sean McVay, man. So
absolutely, yes. You're talking about an offensive mastermind. Yeah. It almost seems like boring to say that because that's all everybody ever talks about. But he's a young guy that can relate. You know what I'm saying? So I think that those relationships that he develops with his players will ultimately make them better players and put them in a better position to win. So we can't wait for that matchup between LA and Detroit. Where Jared Goff gets to come back in the visitors' locker room to play Matt Stafford coming in the home locker room, getting ready to play against his team. That's going to be a crazy match, So it's going to be a weird year, but nonetheless, he's excited for it.
Hey, what's your son's name? We might try to get him on the show before the season starts.
Bryson Hopkins, man.
We're gonna reach out to him and see if he wants to come on before the season starts.
I'm sure he will. Matter of fact, for Father's Day, we had him on Sirius XM.
Oh wow.
Yeah, my co-host Bill Leckis and I, we both have sons on. Now we both got other kids, but Michael, his oldest, is a baseball player, and we talk about him a lot on the show. Bryson, obviously being an NFL player, we talk a lot about him on the show. Not to take away from their siblings, but we had those two on the show for Father's Day, and it was really fun. Just having Bill ask him questions about his childhood and the relationship he and I have, and his journey so far in the NFL.
Yeah. So now, speaking of your broadcasting career, what's it like being on the radio, Sirius XM NFL? You guys do a great job. I'm a listener too, and Bill Leckis is amazing what he does.
That's my guy, man.
Yeah. So I think I called into your show once too before, but yeah. So what's it like working on with him, and actually obviously working at Lance too, and what's it like now covering the game and seeing your son and other young talent come up?
So when I started at Sirius about 7 years ago, I was working a number of different channels. We had Bleacher Report back then. I worked on the college channels, all of the conference channels, and of course my NFL channel. So I got a lot of different experiences, a lot of different relationships that were created from that situation. And it's really, I try and make what we do as conversational as possible.
Yeah.
Innately, people are voyeurs. They're nosy. They want to listen to what you're talking about and don't really want you to know that they're listening. That's what radio is. Yeah. It's a lot different than TV because it's less scripted and there's more interaction. People can call us and we can literally talk to them about their ideas and things, and just share those moments. And me having a degree in communications, I think that I was cut out for this. I was cut out to be able to kind of share what my experience was in those certain situations that come in question, how I see them, and then try and understand the other pictures too that come up, So with Bill and I, since we're on Sunday mornings, we've just developed a great rapport in that we talk about each other's families. It's honestly not work. Because it's like a couple of guys on the phone talking about all the actions going on in the NFL. You know what I mean? So it's really fun. And then, of course, I love talking to people.
Right.
And when we open up the phones, the 877 NFL kick, and start buzzing, people could call. And Charlie from Chicago's talking about them Bears, man. I got their name, you know what I'm saying? So you do your research. You do your homework. You try and stay on top of everything. So in that way, because it's different than a local market.
Yeah.
Market is specific to your team. It's easy to track who comes and goes, the expectations, all those things, the conversation, the dialogue about that team. But what about the other 31?
Yeah.
where having a national platform like SiriusXM, it adds a little bit of a challenge to it. Now, I might not be off into the weeds like the local broadcasters, which is why we rely a lot on those broadcasters and those people that cover those prospective teams. We have them as content on the show because, we're not there every day watching you practice. You know what I'm saying? But what we can do is ask questions of those people that are directly responsible for articulating what's going on those different teams. So I love asking questions. And that's what I think makes me a better broadcaster is the fact that not only can I answer the questions and speak clearly enough for you to understand, hopefully, what I'm saying, I can flip it around and say, okay, well, let me ask you some things, Nathan. I see all those trophies behind you there.
Yeah.
Were you someone that found competition to be a huge part of what you are right now? How did you end up becoming, a broadcaster and having a podcast like this?
I mean, so when last year when the sports shut down, when the pandemic started, all my friends said we got nothing to watch and nothing to do. So one of my friends, actually all my friends said you should start something, and they said I have the talent for it. So I said, okay, well, I listened to them. Why not start this show called the NR? The NR stands for my name, Nathan Ramachandra. So we made an easy name, and I didn't expect this to grow big because now we're on all platforms. We're on Spotify now. Mm-hmm. We're on Spreaker. We're trying to get on iHeartRadio. That's still pending, but and then all my friends think we're crazy because we're already at 830. You're the 830 episode in a year. Like I said, if you love what you do, it's all about passion, hard work, and we put in the work every day. I have a team of 7 people that helps out with my show. Unfortunately, they're busy right now, so I've been doing the work myself, but I put in the work every day. Every morning when I wake up, I say, man, today's gonna be a good day because I love what I do, and and this show is amazing. I thank all my friends who push me to do this and every day because this thing is growing by the minute, and we're getting quality guests on, even you. And we're not like those reporters that ask 20 questions. We're like a casual, laid back, conversational show. And that's why this show is popular. And I started this this show is a year old now, and to be at 830 episodes in a year, we have done 7 episodes in one day before, so it's crazy.
You are cranking them out, bro. I tell you that. But I will say I like the way your interview process goes. The way you conduct an interview is that you're not answering the question as you ask it. In other words, you're not saying, "Well, Brad, was the reason you became a football player because of X, Y, or Z?" It could be A, B, C, or D. You know what I'm saying? So when you're giving me those options, and that's why I try and train my young athletes to think about, you're in control of the interview, bro. You are. They may be asking you a question, but you don't have to answer it.
Right.
What you want to talk about. A lot of questions are like dumb questions, being honest, So why did you lose the game? You lost the game. You know what I mean? It's like it's such an open-ended question, like they just really want you to start talking to create content, right? Instead of having a discussion. So my thing is, don't answer the question as you're asking it. Just ask the question organically and let the response be the response.
Yeah.
And trying to put them on a track of one or the other to say, well, is it this or is it that? No, it's neither one of those. It's this, So you're in control of the interview. You're having a conversation with some people. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying to be confrontational. I'm just saying, how many times do you see a headline that supposedly came from a player that was answering a question?
Yeah.
What do you think about Matthew Stafford? Well, geez. Next thing you know, it's on the thing. Well, Brad Hopkins said Matthew Stafford's a bum. You know what I'm saying? I didn't say that. You said that. You asked me if I thought he was a bum. And all of a sudden it comes out and says, I said it. You know what I'm saying? So it can be tricky like that, if you don't really know how to answer certain things. So we do a lot of training on how to conduct yourself in an interview.
Yeah. I don't know. This, my friends already noticed I had the talent to do this. And like I said, I thank them every day, all of them. And I'm really grateful. Thanks to everyone for tuning in this show because, I'm thankful for all the guests that we had that they take some time out of their day just to come on the show, even you to talk about sports and the career. So it's amazing.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So now we do this fun little segment called the rapid fire segment. You ready for this?
Oh Lord, let's go.
So I want to start off with this topic. I think everybody now this is an important topic that everyone should be talking about. obviously NFL made history. Carl Nassib, Raiders player, who announced that he's coming out gay. And what are your thoughts on this? And do you think he's going to have trouble this year with the other players on the other side?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I played with a lot of gay guys. It wasn't public. We knew it, but it wasn't an issue. Why? Because they could play.
Yeah.
Some of the better people on our team, some of the best people on our team, people that we relied on, people that we had counted on to be able to get the job done. This is accountability. Can you do it or not? Period. Because in the end, and I'm not liking this for the life or death aspect of it, but it's very soldier-esque in that those soldiers that sacrifice their lives for our liberties, they're not doing it for a flag.
Yeah.
They're not doing it for you. They're doing it for that guy to his left and that guy to his right, because that's how you come home.
Mm-hmm.
In our situation, I need to be able to trust you. I need to be able to trust that when that ball is in the air and we're blocking our butts off, giving that quarterback time to throw it, you're going to catch it.
Right.
Then running back, hit that hole that I just made for you. Don't run into my back. You know what I'm saying? I've got to be able to trust that you understand what your job is and get it done. Other than that, it doesn't matter. So I applaud anybody that can stand up, through situations like this and say, this is who I am, and feel comfortable in doing that. But I would imagine that his support system is big enough, is strong enough to allow him to get through, the downside to that whole deal. You know what I'm saying? But for me, it was no different. We just got to do the job. As a matter of fact, I love those guys just like I love anybody else that I played with. You know what I'm saying? It really didn't matter.
So for you, where were you at that day when Julio Jones came to the Tennessee Titans when he got traded? How excited are you now, and what was your reaction when they made the trade? Because I tweeted that day when, like I said it's a new big three in the NFL with Julio Jones, Derrick Henry, and AJ Brown. They remind me of I put an analogy out there: Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie.
Oh, snap! You in basketball with it? Oh, okay. Yeah. I feel. Ironically, Nathan, we were on the air.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and I were on the air that Sunday morning when it came across that they'd actually made the deal. Now, they said that he's going to Tennessee, but the deal hadn't been finalized. Then like 20 minutes later, bam, the deal had been finalized. And then we actually saw pictures of him getting off the private jet and meeting John Robinson, and it looked like, oh my gosh, this thing it's going to happen, Our original thought was, when you looked at the odds makers in Vegas, how they had us at one position to be able to get to the Super Bowl, how it changed that whole trajectory, him being a part of the team. First thing I thought was there's going to be more of a national spotlight on this team.
Right.
More opportunities to shine or not. You know what I mean? So when you have a player of that caliber, it really does draw a lot of attention, and seemingly how it's going to change the dynamic of this offense, in that you can't stack the line of scrimmage to slow down the run game, because you're going to get beat by AJ Brown and Julio Jones. Yep. You have to keep somebody deep, right?
Yep.
So the guys up front have to get on their matchups, stay on their matchups, so that way that extra guy doesn't become an issue.
Right.
There are plays to be made, you know what I'm saying? And it's going to be a pickle for any defensive coordinator to put together the right plan to stop that three-headed hydra. But either way, I think it's less predictable. But the thing the Titans obviously need to address is what? Defense.
Yep.
Can't get in a pissing match with the skunk. You're going to lose.
Right.
And in other words, you can't match me score for score for score for score. You got to get stops, get the ball in the hands of your offense, let them do their job. And that was a problem for the Titans last year. Now, maybe with Bud Dupree, Danico Autry, some of these other veterans, drafting Caleb Farley, in the back end that you can develop into, tomorrow's star, tomorrow's leader on that team. Maybe they will have put together enough of a team to develop the kind of chemistry like the defenses we had. We had the freaks. We had, Kevin Carter. Yeah. All these guys that really were ballers. Blaine Bishop. Mm-hmm. I'm saying these were Pro Bowlers that really we relied on, and we made each other better during the week. So wouldn't it be great for Derrick Henry to go up against a really good defense during the week, and then Sunday is like old hat, This is easy compared to what I got going on in the week, because we get after it during the week. So, there's a lot that's expected of this team now that you have those kind of players on it, and we'll just see how they respond.
Favorite memorable game that you played in the NFL?
Super Bowl 34. That seems like low-hanging fruit. That's too easy.
Right.
How about the first game we played in Adelphia Coliseum? The first time that we actually ran out of the tunnel in this brand spanking new stadium, and 90% of the people that were there were for us.
Wow.
And it was a hard-fought game. We played against the Bengals, like I said. Almost lost that game, but yet getting that first win, really kind of starting something. And we didn't know that first win was going to lead to us getting to the Super Bowl, but we put our best foot forward. We're able to take advantage of that. We had a couple of hiccups. Matter of fact, I think we lost the next 3. And they likened that to the 1993 season that I started, where we were 1-4, and then we won 11 games straight to end up getting to the playoffs and getting a first round bye and whatever. But it was a crazy up and down year. But it did start with that first game of rolling out the Tennessee Titans, and that was an exciting era for us. So that's probably one of the more exciting games, one of the more memorable games anyway.
Funniest teammate that you play with and funniest person that you work with right now?
Funniest teammate I played with? Man, that is a great question. Zach Pillar out of the University of Florida. He was the guard that I played alongside the last 3 years of my career. Left side pride, Zach, if you're watching this. That guy is just a nut. You know what I'm saying? Just one of those quick, witty dudes that just always has something funny at the top of, on the tip of his tongue. And, just it's just a great dude to be around. So I loved his approach in life. You know what I'm saying? Just a great dude. And he was probably one of the funnier guys that I actually played alongside. I played with, almost 1,000 dudes. If you think about 13 years, 80, 90 plus guys on the team during camp. And then of course it dwindles down, but either way, there's so much turnover that you guys saw bodies, over the years that I was there in Tennessee and in Houston. And he's one that sticks out. I have tons of them that were funny and great teammates, but he's one that comes to mind first and foremost. And funniest guy I work with now, obviously Bill Leckis. Well, I work with Zig Fracassi too.
Oh, Zig Fracassi, yep.
Yes. Okay, so Bill Leckis works with Steve Torrey during the NFL season, doing I think it's called the Sunday Drive. They, track all the games, tell you what's going on before you do live looks into those games, and you can hear them. So on Sunday nights, after all the games are done, Zig and I do the recap.
Yeah.
Tell you how the games went, we kind of give you the scores, the updates, and how things are, how the things shaped up that weekend. So during the season, I'm on with Zig, and during the off season, I'm on with Bill. Right. So both of those guys are phenomenal broadcasters. They're aces at what they do, and they're pretty funny too. Bill's, I'm not sure that Bill's as funny as Zig, but they both have their own strengths, and they're wonderful to work with.
So I'm a big Dallas Cowboy fan, and what are your?
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm joking.
Yeah. So So what are your thoughts on the offensive line? Because now we're getting back 3 of them: Collins, Tyron Smith, and Zach Martin. Do you think we can have one of the best offensive lines again, or do you think it's?
Yeah, I'm slightly concerned about Tyron just because health has been an issue. What do they say? The best ability is what? Availability. It sounds cliche-ish, but it's true. If you can bench 500 pounds, if you can run a 4.2, you can do all these things. It makes no bit of difference if you're not on the field. So injuries haven't been a part of that offensive line, and ultimately how that offense performs. Yeah. There's reason to be questioned about it. But hope reigns eternal, Nathan. It's a big year.
Yep.
And so that means everything's everything. As long as the guys are healthy going into camp, you got an option. You got a chance.
Right.
They signed Zach, not Zach, Dak, to obviously a long-term deal before he got hurt. So he's solidified. Seems healthy. You know what I mean? It's a quirky accident the way he got hurt anyway. I think that he put himself in that position anyway. Again, he'll be smarter about it. But needless to say, and this is Ezekiel's team now. Don't get me wrong. Because the offensive coordinator will tell you, if you can't run the football, you can't go anywhere.
Right.
That's from 22. That cat's got to go 21. Which one?
21.
21. He's got to be able to run the football, And fortunately for the Cowboys and their offense, He's still one of the marquee backs in the league.
Yep.
So you got a chance. But a lot of like what happened in Tennessee, you have to have a defense that can match that too.
Right.
Especially in that division. You got to be able to harass Jalen Hurts. You got to make sure
Daniel Jones
doesn't run all over you. You know what I'm saying? And Ryan Fitzpatrick, that crazy gnome distraction. That cat can play.
Yeah.
He's been a winner wherever he's went, and he always has the rapport with his teammates that make you credible, basically. So I love his intellect. I love his ability to connect with the guys around him and make them better. So it's not going to be an easy trek for them in the NFC East at all.
Yeah, and also Daniel Jones, we have to worry about from the
Daniel Jones. I mean, if he's not tripping himself running for a touchdown, this cat can get after it. You know what I'm saying?
That was funny.
That's funny. Either way.
Yeah. So I know you're a broadcaster now, but if the right opportunity presents for yourself, would you consider being a coach somewhere in the college or NFL ranks, or like an offensive line coach or a head coach down the line?
What do you think about that? No, absolutely not. The time commitment for a coach is way more than being a player, and that's just not for me.
Yeah.
I'm in the exact role God intended me to be in. My name's Brad for a reason.
Yeah.
Because I'm a brother dad. Think of the connection. Brad, brother dad. See what I did there? Your brother in that I played the game.
Yeah.
I'm your dad in that, I'm old enough to have, learned from my experiences, and hopefully I can teach you and you can take something from what I've learned, just like my father would do. You know what I mean? So I'm in the perfect role as the player development director to be able to connect with these guys and make sure that they understand this business and how to take full advantage and being the most successful players that they can be, and then graduate to what their life's going to be for the next 30, 40 years.
Right.
And that you had an illustrious career to be able to play that long. You know what I'm saying? The average is what, 2? I think that's the average of all the guys that have come in this NFL. So with that being said, guess what? Most likely you're going to be in your mid-20s when this thing's all said and done. What are you going to do at the next phase? Let's talk about that. Let's map out a course. Let's set some goals. You see what I'm saying? Develop a strategy and a plan for you to navigate through this craziness. That way when you come out on the other side, you're okay.
Yeah, so speaking of coaching, what are your thoughts when your former teammate Eddie George got the Tennessee State job, and obviously HBCU schools is improving, and the growth of it is amazing. Obviously Deion Sanders at Jackson State University, now you have Eddie George. What was that? Did you reach out to him when he got the job?
Yeah, I reached out to him, but it was because the strength and conditioning coach at TSU wanted to make sure they're still going to use him. Pretty well. As a matter of fact, he trains a lot of guys getting ready for the combine. So I did reach out to him in that capacity, but not about anything. I'm supposed to congratulate him. But I will say that whole situation, when you have players like Eddie George, Deion Sanders, what they make people realize is that players do have leverage.
Right.
You don't always have to go to a Power 5 school, D1 school. You can make a difference. And I think that players that have had that kind of gravitas to them, like those players I just mentioned, they can bring those resources that we've seen Power 5s take advantage of to the HBCUs, making that institution more relevant.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Especially for people that look like them. Follow me here. In the end, this, even in the college levels of business, because those institutions are making hundreds of millions of dollars off of the efforts of, the guys that they coach. So I think that when you have players that go back and give back and become coaches that ultimately end up directing, the course of pretty successful players, then you can start to see that connection trickle down. You know what I'm saying? Now you have to play Alabama to get $1 million to build your weight room. You've got some of the best players that TV wants to come watch.
Right.
Steve McNair went to an HBCU. What if you had 5 or 6 or 7 Steve McNairs in the HBCU level that then become more nationally recognized? Now those institutions have the same kind of resources and can then further develop and grow into better institutions, just like we see Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, those traditional sports schools. But guess what? You're going to get a better degree too because they've got more resources. You don't think those kids that go to school there that are not student athletes are taking advantage of the fact that their athletic department's bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars to that endowment to allow them to open up new buildings, new resources, different degrees? So they want the same kind of resources. And how that happens is by attracting those star-studded athletes, those 4 and 5 stars that are going off to these other schools. It gives them leverage. Say, hey, look, we want to do that too. So I did. Totally dig it.
Yeah.
And being a head coach is really about the hires.
Right.
Because as a head coach, I'm not sitting down there putting the offensive line through drills. I'm not running routes with the receivers. You know what I mean? What I'm doing is I'm hiring you, Nathan, because you have offensive line coach experience. Mm-hmm. I'm hiring you, Brad Hopkins, because you have quarterback experience. And we're going to use these experiences to make our players, our athletes, as best as they possibly can be.
Right.
If you don't do that, then guess what? I got to find somebody else.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's about delegating responsibility. And Eddie can do that better, just like anybody else.
Mm-hmm. So before we get to the last 2 things here, real quick, do you think Derrick Henry can reach Eddie George's records? And also, who do you have in the NBA Finals?
I don't want Derrick Henry to reach Eddie George's record. That's my back.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? We want to go down in history as having best block for the best back, not only in this franchise, but in the league. I say that tongue in cheek. I wish Derrick Henry all the success in the world. Love him to death. I just, obviously I have a certain fondness for my guy 2-7. You hate seeing great players like that, their records getting taken down.
Yeah.
Obviously, records are made to be broken. We understand that. If Derrick Henry does break Eddie George's records at any stretch, that means that the team has had a successful campaign. That means now the franchise in itself has more respect than it had, before in previous years. So I do wish Derrick Henry a lot of success. I hope that he does everything that Eddie did, but just falls just a yard short of breaking Eddie's record. That means that we still have the best back that ever played for this franchise. Whoa!
And so who do you have in the NBA Finals?
Oh man! So what's up with Kawhi? They showed him tonight in the suite.
Yeah,
he's having some issue. I'm not sure the Clippers can actually do it without him. You know what I mean? They need him on the court. Puts too much pressure on PG-13. You know what I mean? And like Kawhi, and like Ty Lue was saying, they need to stop having the ball stop situation where a dude is dribbling around the perimeter trying to find an open shot. Move the thing around. Find the guy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And trust me, Chris Paul is having an unbelievable playoff series, okay? And it stinks that the COVID jacked him up, but at least they've got Ben Booker to at least kind of offset some of him not being there. So the Phoenix Suns have a chance. I don't like the fact that Milwaukee with Giannis has been labeled the favorite. Even though Giannis is almost unstoppable, right, the guy really doesn't have the kind of handles, you see what I'm saying, to really be, like a Joel Embiid type. Now, they're different guys, obviously, doing different things, but I just think that Giannis is almost more defendable because he doesn't have that attack the basket kind of control. Now, when he gets into the paint, within 4 or 5 feet of the paint, that's a wrap. You know what I mean? The Duke can dunk from the docks, whenever he gets that close. But the perimeter game, kind of suspect. You're not going to see him really banging down threes all the time. And like I said, you can kind of get him off of his course. So, but I
Trae Young.
I don't like his swagoo. I don't, swag as an offensive lineman, keep your mouth shut and play. You know what I'm saying? All the shimmy shake and stuff, and running your mouth to the crowd and stuff. It's going to catch up to you. But I get it. That's part of his motivation. That's part of what drives him as a player. So I can't, if he can do that, and then the floater game, he's putting up the rock for what's the boy with the gold spot on his head?
Oh, damn, I don't know.
You know what I'm talking about? Frank.
Yeah. Oh, Clint Capella. Yeah.
Clint. I said Frank. Clint Capella. Yeah. Or is it Clint? Yeah. Either way, obviously they have weapons too, just like Trae mentioned, and he's one of the more electric guards in the game. I get it, but I would like to see the Milwaukee Bucks play. Just because the Clippers have gotten such a bad, situation sharing the Staples Center with the Lakers, they're always like the stepbrother, you know what I mean? That's the kind of way we felt as Oilers in the state of Texas with the Cowboys and their success when I first came in the league. So I'm kind of honking for the underdog, you know what I mean? I want Kawhi Leonard to come out of, the injury situation, help lead that team, to at least getting into the finals. You know what I'm saying? So I'd like them to get to the finals, and ultimately, Milwaukee needs something, man. The Midwest needs something. They need a shot in the arm. You know what I mean? So I would hope that Giannis and the guys can actually bring home a championship for the Bucks. They deserve it.
Yeah, I got the Hawks and Suns. So
I'm sorry to hear that. CP3 is one of my favorite players in the league. I love his game. I love his attitude. I love his control, his influence, and he has some of the best State Farm commercials that are out there. You know, so he's an entertaining fellow to say the least.
Yeah. So the last two things here before I let you go, our team is part of this foundation. Obviously, you know him, Hugh Jackson. He's a former NFL coach, and we're part of his foundation. And now he's the offensive coordinator with Eddie George at Tennessee State, and we're trying to help him prevent human trafficking, making sure the community stays safe and the kids stay safe. So I'll send you his foundation so you can go check it out.
Please do. I got a lot of respect for Hugh Jackson. Thought he got a bad rap in Cleveland. You know what I mean? He was, always been credible where he's been, has a great connection with the guys. And I wish him well at the college level. You know what I mean? Maybe people will take his experience in the NFL a lot more seriously and, really look at the opportunity that they have being coached by a guy that has NFL experience, that has those kind of connections. So hopefully it'll make a difference. And my goodness, there's so many crazy things going on this planet.
Yeah.
I ultimately just want us all to be happy and connected, as God intended. We put so much into race. Do you realize that race isn't real?
Yeah.
Do you realize that because of the continents moving apart from one another into different parts of this planet, that's why we have skin color, that's why we have hair texture, that's why we have our diets being a part of who we are? We all come from the same person, the same people. We're all humans. There is no master race. There's no difference in you or me. It's your closeness to temperate climates, to cold weather climates, bigger noses to cool the brain when you live near the equator, smaller noses to keep the brain warm. Right. You're in colder climates like Ireland and whatnot. So think, people, before you start creating this divisive rhetoric when it's really dumb if you think about it. Race isn't anything but something that's used to, to count numbers. You know what I mean? But it's not anything real. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and essential workers right now?
Much like we do those people that protect our liberties, thank you for your service. Thank you for sacrificing. Thank you for committing yourself to, saving us globally. You know what I mean? Or at least putting us in the position to take advantage of those things that could actually, save a person's life. Yeah. So every day is a risk for them going to work. And I don't have that kind of profession. So I have a complete appreciation for those that do have that kind of profession and they put their lives on the line every day to make sure that we can come home to our families.
Yep. Well said. And there it is. That wraps up episode 830 with the great Brad Hopkins, a former NFL left tackle, played for the Tennessee Oilers, Houston Oilers, and now Tennessee Titans. Thank you for joining the show. It's truly an honor. Obviously, 2-time Pro Bowl, and now he analyzes the game as a broadcaster. You can find him on Sirius XM NFL Radio. Go follow him on all social media formats. He's one of the best out there. Thank you again, Brad, for joining the show. It's truly an honor. We would like to have you back as a returning guest at some point so you can meet the full team.
Well, good job, Nathan, and listening to your friends that supported you to start this podcast. You did a great job, and I wish you a lot of luck.
Thank you. That was awesome.